dreams are coming true. I just wanna put my heels on tight, dance with you all night, move to my favorite song.
So hey y'all, and welcome back to my kitchen. My name is Bethany, and we're just going to jump right on into this week's What's for Dinner. Up first, we're going to have some ribs, my homemade potato salad, and some asparagus. And against my better judgment, I did bake these ribs in the oven. I wished I had grilled them, but my husband was out of town, and I was just cooking this for me and the little ones. And I'm not a professional griller, so we put these ribs in the oven, but I would prefer them to have them on the grill. But as you can tell, I'm just seasoning up the ribs, and I do add mustard to my ribs, and you don't taste the mustard. It just kind of gives it a little base, and it holds on all that seasoning. Then once I got it all seasoned and based up, I just wrapped it in aluminum foil and I put that in the oven on 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. And then this is how it looked once I took it out. And now I'm going to add my barbecue sauce. Then I'm just going to rub that on there really well and put that back in there for another 20 minutes. Here's how they looked once they were all done. And then for our sides to go with our ribs, I'm going to be making my homemade potato salad. And I've shared that over here on my channel so many times before. But all I did was wash and dice up some potatoes and boiled them. And I also boiled 2 eggs, 2 to 3 eggs, just depends on if you like a lot of egg or not as much eggs. But anyway, once I get the eggs and the potatoes boiled, I like to mash up the potatoes and the eggs, and I go in with some mayonnaise, mustard, and some relish. And I don't know exact measurements, y'all. I just kind of eyeball it until it looks how I know it's supposed to look. I've made it so many times, I just already know what I need in there. But I will type out the best description in my description box of the recipe. So then I also went in with a little bit of salt and pepper. I cooked the asparagus in the air fryer on 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. I did cover it in olive oil and some garlic powder and some onion powder. And then there was our plate once it was all plated up. Moving into the next dinner, we're going to be making some homemade sloppy joes and some homemade fries. So here's all the ingredients that you'll need to make the homemade sloppy joes. I got a pound of ground beef. Got just a little bit of brown sugar. We're not going to use all of that. Some minced garlic, some Worcestershire sauce, some ketchup, a bell pepper, an onion, the seasonings that I'm going to season up my meat with, and my buns. Alright, so first things first, we're going to have to wash and dice up our bell pepper and our onion. And my onion was on the smaller side, so you may not need a whole large onion. Like I said, my onion was smaller, and I wound up not using my whole bell pepper. I only used about half of it. So now we're going to add that into our pot with a little bit of olive oil, kind of get that cooking down. And then once our onion and our bell pepper is cooked down just a little bit, we're going to add in some of this minced garlic and let that cook in there as well. And then once the peppers and the onion were almost done, I went in with my 1 pound of ground beef, and I just kind of broke that up in there and let that brown up. I did season it, and I'm seasoning it with some garlic powder, some onion powder, and some soul food seasoning, but you can season yours with whatever kind of seasonings that you prefer. And then of course, once all that ground beef got browned up, I strained off all of the grease off of it. Now we're going to start making our sloppy joe sauce, and to make it, you'll need a cup of brown sugar and a cup of ketchup. But I've got a 2-cup measuring cup right here, so I just filled it up to a cup with the brown sugar, and then I just filled it up the rest of the way to the 2nd cup with the ketchup, and I just poured that in there together. And I'm just going to kind of make sure that all that ground beef gets covered with that ketchup and brown sugar. And then I'm going to go in with just a little bit of this Worcestershire sauce. I feel like you probably only need a couple of tablespoons, but I just kind of dump some in there, and then I'll just mix all that up and make sure everything gets good and incorporated. And after I got it all mixed up, I tasted it, and I felt like it just needed a little bit of a tanginess to it, so I added in about a tablespoon of mustard, yellow mustard, and mixed that in there as well. Alright, so after I got my potatoes all washed up, we're going to cut them up into the french fry shape. And I just cut mine in half, and then I do like little sections, and then I kind of cut the little sections in half again. I feel like it's really hard to describe, so I'm just going to show you on the screen right here how I done it. And then once I have them all cut up into the french fry shapes, I put a bowl of water next to me so that I can put them in that water. That water helps soak up some of that starch out of that potato. And then also, while I'm cutting up these potatoes, I have a pan on the stove full of frying oil. I'm using vegetable oil, but you can use whatever kind of oil that you like to fry in. Or you probably could also do this recipe in the air fryer or even the oven, but I prefer to have mine fried in oil. It's not the healthiest, but I promise you it tastes way better. So those were the seasonings that I'm going to season up the french fries with. After I take them out of the water, I strain all the water off of them, make sure they're kind of dry, and then I season them. And I'll pop up a little clip right here showing the seasonings again. But anyway, once I get them all seasoned up, we're just dropping them into our frying hot grease. And then I usually let mine fry for a good 5 to 10 minutes. Of course, you'll know when they're done, they'll look like a brown color and they'll be floating, as you see right here on the screen. And then I just remove them into a paper towel plate so that the paper towel can soak up some of that grease off of those potatoes. Then here's how they looked once they were all done. So here is our plate. Once it was all plated up, we have our homemade sloppy joe on bun and then our homemade french fries, and we do like to dip our french fries in ketchup. I just didn't have that on my plate yet. And then moving into the next dinner, y'all, I've got this nostalgia little weenie roaster. And so most of you don't know, but I'm an activity director at a nursing home, so I'm in charge of all the activities, and I used this for the 4th of July so that I could roast them up some hot dogs. And we had watermelon, and then we had chips to go with our hot dogs. But anyway, it was a good old time. They enjoyed it. But so I wanted to kind of test this thing out before I took it to work, and just didn't know how to work it, but it was super easy to work. And if I can find a link, I'll link it in my description box if y'all are interested in one. But all you do is put the hot dogs on there and it rolls them and it heats them up, and then you put the buns in the top and it toasts them up there. But anywho, here was our dinner for this night. We had hot dogs, and then we had some chips on the side, and I had a few little pickles because I feel like I just needed some pickles. I don't know. But I highly recommend that nostalgia weenie roaster if you're having like a party or like a circus theme party. It really came in clutch. Alright, so moving right along into the next dinner for this week's What's for Dinner. My husband actually cooked dinner on this night. It was our 4th of July, and like I said earlier, I had to work on the 4th of July, so he grilled up some leg quarters, and y'all, I don't know what he seasoned them with. That man seasons with all the seasonings in the seasoning cabinet. So anyway, he seasoned them up and grilled them on our grill, and then he opened up a can of baked beans and added some hot dogs and let that simmer on the back burner, and he started some potatoes and some eggs boiling so that whenever I got home, I could just make my potato salad. Same way I shared earlier in the video, but like I said earlier, I will type out a recipe the best that I can in my description box. And then here was our dinner once it was all plated up. So moving into the very last dinner for this week's What's for Dinner, we're going to make some skillet butter pork chops, some noodles and tomatoes, and some like the steamable bags of vegetable mix, broccoli, cauliflower, and carrots. So of course you just pop those in the microwave. And then I'm going to make some noodles and tomatoes. And the tomatoes that I had up there were some like fresh tomatoes that we had in our freezer. I like to put those up in the summertime just so that we can have them to use throughout the year and I don't have to buy as much canned goods. But for the pork chops, I'm just seasoning them up, and I'm seasoning them with some Lowry's seasoning salt, some garlic powder, some onion powder, and some of that Everglazed seasoning. Then I'll flip them over and season them on the other side as well. And then once I get all the pork chops seasoned up, I'm just going to add some butter into my skillet and get that to melting. And then I'm going to add the pork chops into the buttered skillet. I'm going to cook them for 5 to 10 minutes on each side. And of course you can tell when they're done because they will look this way. And then I'm just going to remove them from the skillet onto a plate. And then I'll just do the other ones until I get them all cooked up. And then for the noodles and tomatoes, I just add the frozen tomatoes into a pot. And I do like to add a little bit of water into the bottom of the pot to keep the tomatoes from scorching. And then I just kind of let those tomatoes melt down. And once they melt down, I like to add a little bit of water in there. And then I add the noodles and let the noodles cook until they're completely done. And that's it. Some salt and pepper, it's done. And then here was our plate, y'all. Like I said, once it was all done, I cooked the vegetables in the microwave. But y'all, that's it for this week's What's for Dinner. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave me a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already. I love each and every one of y'all, and I will catch you all in the very next one. Bye, y'all.
Now all my dreams are coming true. I just wanna put my hands